The kidnapping of the funk, the rock, the soul, and the R&B was horrific. True, times do change. Nothing stays the same. While you can unplug the clock, but time keeps going. Tick tock, tick tock. Nothing stays the same. But some things from the past should remain because it gives us a foundation for the continuation. From the funk, the rock, and the jam we received, it gave us structure, it connected with an emotion that gave us a calmness within our own personal sense of self. The black musician, God's creation, that was put in a musical position to give us music that adds to the flashback of our lives to go forward toward the future. They took away music, they took away instruments, and in return, they gave us fast food, belly to the pavement, negative grooves that makes us move in ways that we shouldn't be moving, and it adds to the dysfunction of unformed minds and does something criminal to them. Music is very powerful. Music is a deep source. Sly and the Family Stone, James Brown, Kool and the Gang, Graham Central Station, BT Express, Brass Construction, Mass Production, Brick, Crown Heights Affair, The Ohio Players, Jimmy Castor and the Castor Bunch, The Bar-Kays, Hamilton Bohannon, Heatwave, Slave, and so many more we shall explore. Welcome to the Funk Lounge, Talk Theater. I am yours truly, the true to form funk prophet, funk jam artist, the Rex, coming at you full power and exact with that James Brown payback. Tonight's guest is Lamar Webster. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's this wonderful gentleman I was telling you about, Mr. Lamar Webster. Mr. Webster, how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. Can't complain.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Lamar, let me ask, how did we meet, kind sir?
It was in the Slave Aura Arrington Hall of Fame Facebook group
Mm.
that now has about 10,000 members. But when we both ran into each other, they were at about 6.5 thousand members.
Mm. Uh, uh, Lamar, do we know each other?
No,
No, have we met in person before?
no, sir.
Okay, so what was it about? Now, here you are, a grown man, been there, done that. You know what time it is without the watch. You have a third eye behind your back. You ain't no joke. You homemade from scratch. What was it about me that made you connect?
I think it was our mutual respect
Mm.
for the conversations that we either started
Mm-hmm.
or replied to in that slave Facebook group.
Yes, yes.
And I could tell that you had some knowledge about some things,
Mm.
and you could tell that I had some knowledge about some things.
And brother, that's
So
man, and brother, what you just said is complete and homemade, man. And thank you. And this is the year of 2024. Again, this is the Funk Lounge Talk Theater. This is the first of its kind, and this is the debut show, man. And the universe and God and the higher power brought this wonderful soulful spirit into my life, man. Because this man, he knows what time it is without the watch. Ohio, the place, man. I mean, you got New York, you got Philly, you got Baltimore, Virginia. You don't hear about Virginia too much when it comes to funk and stuff, but you got the Carolinas, you got Alabama, you got Jersey. But man, that doggone Detroit, but that doggone Ohio. Oh my goodness. You talk about ragtime, big band, jazz, doo-wop, everything. But when that funk began to happen, for something happened when James Brown made that visit. When James Brown made that visit. And Mr. Lamar Webster, can you take it from there, please?
Well, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, approximately about an hour north of Cincinnati, off I-75, which goes all the way up to Detroit.
Mm.
So Dayton at one time had one of the largest 90-minute markets in the country, which means in a radius of 90 minutes, there was access to so many things as far as moving product and stuff like that. You could get to Columbus, you could get to Indianapolis, 3 hours you can get to Detroit, Cleveland, and Louisville. So we always grew up hearing about the tri-state and the tri-state market. Uh, I just happened to grow up at a time when the music scene was really ripe in Dayton, especially for teenagers. So we got instruments for Christmas. And when we got those instruments, we looked around for bands to play with and to get ready for talent shows in school and at the recreation centers. In my neighborhood alone, and you have guys from Lakeside, the Shelby brothers, Thomas Shelby and Will Shelby. They grew up 2 streets over from me. Marvin Craig, the bass player, grew up 1 street over from me. You also had Danny Webster, who grew up 1 street over from me. Then there was another neighborhood behind Shiloh Church. It would take me about maybe 15 minutes or 10 minutes to walk to that neighborhood. And that's where Lockett, Mark Adams,
Go ahead.
Floyd Miller, they all lived in the same neighborhood.
I'm getting emotional now, man.
So again, that's like 20 minutes from me or less. And then also going back the other way from me, you had Mark Wood with Lakeside, and you had Walter Juni Morrison.
Oh, come on, man.
So we all grew up in those 2 neighborhoods. That's just the way it was in Dayton. So we would see guys walking on the weekends with their guitars or with their horns or whatever. We knew they were going to some kind of rehearsal. So once we would go and, oh, where's they going? Where they going? You know, they must be going to play some music. So that's just how the music scene was back there in Dayton.
You
Now,
know, hold on, Lamar, I got to ask you this. This is very
Sure.
important, man, because this is deep. And this is to all the young people out there that's listening, because all you young people that I talk to and, you know, CU Denver and Boulder and all the college, all you young people, man, who are interested in African-American black music, you know, life before hip-hop, life before thug life. Life before pants sagging, hat to the back, attitudes, broken ebonics, crazy shit, criminal-minded insanity. Life before all that. This is the homemade from scratch talk when it comes to the foundation of what is. This man right here is telling you, 'cause he's giving you elements, he's giving you jewels. And just think about what he said, young people. Listen to what this Bible of a man has said. He said when we were teenagers. You know what that means for an artist, that there were garage bands, you were looking for an instrument, no anger, you know, you wasn't looking to talk some crazy shit on the microphone. No, you were looking for an instrument. Go ahead, Mr. Lamar.
Okay, so the section that I grew up in was called Westwood in West Dayton. So let's go up to another part of town called Residence Park in Dayton, another section on the west side, because the west side was where most of the black families lived at, you know, in the 60s. That's where I moved over into that area in 1963 with my parents. So there was another section called Residence Park. And in that section, you had guys like Otis Stokes, who played with Lakeside, his older brother, Hakeem Stokes, who played in a group called Platypus, you know, they had a record deal.
And wasn't Billy Beck with them too?
No, Billy wasn't with them.
Okay.
Yeah, Billy was from Youngstown, Ohio.
Go
So
ahead now.
Billy wasn't on the scene yet. But and just in that area of Residence Parks where you had the Stokes family, and then there was a lot of musicians from there. The two important musicians that I'm going to name are two brothers, Charles Carter and Sam Carter.
Oh, come on, man. Hall of Fame?
Well, back for the Hall of Fame, Slave on the Showtime album,
Go
and
ahead
then Hall
now.
of Fame.
Go ahead.
So they lived in the same area that I'm talking about in Residence Park.
Mm.
And across the street from them
It's too
lived a guy named Lloyd Jones, who was the bass player for the group Platypus. His older brother played in my group, record player, Delbert Jones. So
and you said your group was named Record Player.
my group was named Record Player.
Go ahead,
right?
bro. Go ahead.
And we had so there were different pockets of musicians that were in town. Then you had another section where we had a housing project back in the day called DeSoto Bass.
Mm.
And it was near Dunbar High School. And in that section over there, that's where you got Keith and Johnny Wilder.
I can't
who
do this.
later-
I can't do this with you right now. That's too much. I'm about to have a nervous
Yeah.
breakdown. You talking about they there too?
Keith and Johnny
Heat
Wilder
Wave?
from Heat Wave.
I can't do this with you, man. That's too much funk.
They grew up. They're a little bit older than me, but they grew up in Dayton.
Go ahead.
And they used to be in a band called the Hawthorne Express.
Go ahead.
Johnny, when he got in the service,
Mm.
he ended up in Europe,
Go ahead.
and he ran into Rod Temperton.
Go ahead.
And when they got ready to get their deal,
Mm.
Johnny called for his younger brother Keith, and that's how Keith went over to London, and that's how Heatwave got started.
Man,
But those two guys, the Wilder brothers,
Go ahead.
and rest in peace to both of them because they're both deceased now.
Yeah.
But both of them are also from Dayton, Ohio.
Lamar, can I say this to you, man? Because you gave me a little nervous breakdown. You got to forgive me because you're going back to my childhood, man. Because talking to you, I mean, I'm as happy than a kid in a candy store right now, because this is my life. Man, when I first heard Heat Wave and Ohio Players, I had a nervous breakdown, man. With Rod Temperton, you talk about an unsung hero. Man, when you said when Johnny went overseas and met Rod, man, it's amazing the level that Rod Temperton took, like the whole Heat Wave concept and how he understood Johnny and Keith and that sound, like Boogie Nights, Star of the Story, Party Poops, Thermal Warfare. I mean, God, man, what a level! And just you talking, all these guys the state of Ohio, Lamar.
In Dayton, just all of these people I'm talking about are from the city of Dayton. And again, it was just one of those things that it was meant to be. Johnny goes in the service. He ends up in Germany and in Europe. He puts an ad in the paper to find a keyboard player, and Rod Temperton answered the ad. That's how they hooked up.
Wow. My man
And
got with Quincy Jones
he
and took off.
Right, and he was already writing a whole lot of songs. You know, he was been a prolific writer, so I guess since he was very young, so he had a ton of songs. So the thing that's interesting about Heatwave is, as most people that are in the music know, that when Quincy Jones discovered Rod on their first tour with Heatwave, he wanted to use Rod in his camp. And, which worked out well for Rod because Rod really didn't want to be a traveling touring musician. He'd rather just sit in one place and write and create songs. So he only did one tour with Heatwave, to my knowledge. But let me get back to finishing up the rest of the guys, okay?
Go ahead.
That's from Dayton, because we just touching the surface here.
I know.
So let me see. So we got Heatwave so far. We got Slave, and we got Ohio Players, of course, that were from Dayton, and Sugarfoot. Now, Sugarfoot, at that time, Sugarfoot lived across the street from Westwood Elementary School. And my brother just reminded me, he said, you remember when we'd get out of school, Sugarfoot would be on his front porch playing his guitar. And this was 66, 65, 67, somewhere around there, you know. And so the thing about the Ohio Players, we knew who they were. Of course, we couldn't go to the clubs back then, but they had this thing called the show wagon. And the show wagon they had two of them in Dayton. And I know a guy who was part of that. He told me that him and another guy, they went to either Philly or somewhere on the East Coast, like Baltimore, maybe DC, because they heard about that program. It was a summer program for the kids, okay? So it allowed kids, because they could pull the show wagon to any park or any section in town and then drop the stage, you know, it flipped some kind of way and you know, the stage would come out and it had power. And then kids could plug up with their groups and they could perform. So it went from park to park to park to park. And this was a summertime thing. And it was paid for by the grant for Model Cities, from the Model Cities program back in the day.
And you said, what year was this, kind sir?
This was probably going to be like maybe 66, 67, 68, somewhere around there.
That's a deep time too, because James Brown came out with There Was a Time in 1967.
Right. So that was a goal for us as teenagers. We want to put a band together so that we could play on the show wagon or the showmobile.
You said
okay,
you said a goal.
A goal. That was a goal for us as kids. Hey man, let's see if we could put a band together, and let's see if we can sound good enough so that we could play at one of the show wagons, you know, at the parks. You know, again, this is like in the summertime, you know. So during the school year now, when school is in, well, we got talent shows inside school. So that was another way where we want to play for the talent show inside of the schools. So I'm just trying to set up the scene for you on how it was coming up as a teenager in Dayton. Of course, you had the Ohio Players. They were not famous yet, but they were famous in Dayton because they was the best band in Dayton at the time. They didn't sign a deal with Capitol Records until 1967. And I think their first release on Capitol was Observations in Time. They had a little jazz bluesy kind of sound around that time. And then so we had to jump to 1971 when they got signed with Westbound out of Detroit.
Oh, Pain.
And they came out with Pain.
Man, Junie Morrison.
Junie Morrison. They had never had a keyboard player.
Woo.
They never had a keyboard player until they got with Junie. And when Junie came into the group, he had that young energy because he was the youngest guy in the group. And from what I understand, is Junie played with them for about a year before they even went into the studio. So I think Junie came out of high school.
Hold on,
High school in 69 or 70. But go ahead.
Hold on, Mr. Bible. Hold on, Mr. Bible. Take your time with me. You're not gonna blow my mind and not let me come in because you dropping some jewels. You are dropping some facts, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Lamar Webster is in the house. Special guest, man, here at the Funk Lounge Talk Theater. I'm loving this. Let me tell you something, Mr. Webster.
Go ahead.
I was born in 62. Okay. So what, 71, I'm like, how old am I? What, 9, 10, something like whatever. Let me tell you, when I first heard Pain, I said, what? Whoa, man, dun, 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 you know what I mean? Man, and then they go into a James Brown thing. Dun, 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 dun. Man, let me tell you something. Funk, jazz, that's never been heard before, Lamar. They came with some brand new shit when they came with that one, bro.
True. And you have to remember now that Cincinnati's just an hour away.
Be careful. Be careful.
So you know, I believe Marshall Jones, the bass player for the Ohio Players, had gave some lessons to Bootsy when Bootsy was a teenager.
How about that?
because the players would come down there to record sometimes, you know,
Mm.
and check out the scene. You know, the like I said, Dayton was situated in a unique place
Yeah.
because in Cincinnati you had King Records,
Mm.
which recorded. They had the King Studios and King Records Manufacturing,
Sid
so they were
Nathan.
so they could record the records and then get them mastered and stuff, and then they printed them right there in the same facility, and so they could ship the records, you know. And when we were growing up in the between 67, 68, 69, it seemed like every 3 or 4 weeks James Brown would have a new single out.
Yep.
Now I
Yep.
understand why.
Yep.
I understand why
Yep.
now, because they had the printing facility right next to the recording studio.
Let me tell
built.
you something. James Brown and Sid Nathan had the deepest relationship in music history. Because man, James is every week. James had a record out every doggone week. I mean, people don't understand. You had to, you know, young people, whoever listening to this, keep in mind this. I mean, this guy's a Bible, and I came up in this time. Let me tell you something, man. James Brown, y'all don't know the power. Y'all have heard the sample and saw films of James, but you had to live in the moment when James was activated, man. Because I said, no, I'm from New York, so I used to see him down at the Apollo. So I was gifted enough to have people that used to always take me down to see Al Green and James Brown when they came to town, bro. James Brown and Al Green. And let me tell you something, that line was around the corner when James Brown would come to the Apollo in Harlem, baby. That
Right.
line was around the corner. James Brown was powerful. You know, young people, see, I know with your records, your turntables and all that kind of stuff, but to watch a live show where the human body is an instrument, to watch background singers, man, to watch a horn player, a bass player, a guitar, keyboard, B3, you know, tambourine, maracas, a cowbell, congas, bongos, you know, to watch that in full effect and a new groove come out of that, a groove you ain't never heard before, nothing sampled, homemade shit. Go ahead, Lamar.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you. In 1964, I was 11 years old, and I believe that's when the Beatles came to Ed Sullivan.
That was it for me.
And my dad said, "Hey, Lamar, you and your brothers come down here and look at the Beatles is coming on Ed
I was a
Sullivan."
Beatles fanatic.
And I'm like, "What's the Beatles? What is the Beatles?" I had no clue at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw them,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a big impression on me.
No, Beatles fucked me up as a kid. I was done. My mother said I couldn't
Yeah,
get over it. She said I was a nutcase. She
right,
said
right.
I was gone. I was something about that. I had the shampoo. I had the Ringo shampoo bottle. I had the shampoo. I had the poster. You know, with the brick wall in the back when they first when they took a picture in London. That brick wall in the back.
Right,
I
right,
had that, and man, and you know what, Lamar, all that stuff. It was up in it. We just threw it all away. We didn't know it was gonna be valuable one day.
right,
I had the
right.
I had the Beatles VJ. They were on VJ Records before they got with Capitol. They were with a black label in Chicago. I got that record, VJ Records, the Beatles, man, 'cause nobody knew who the hell they were.
Okay, okay. So from the Ed Sullivan show, I'm going to jump to when I saw James Brown on there,
Go ahead, bro.
and he did Papa's Got a Brand New Bag.
Yeah,
And I was like, oh my goodness.
yeah,
Listen to that band.
right,
Look at those musicians.
right.
Look at they're doing steps and movement and how
Bobby
they were
Bird and
dressed and
Bobby Bird and the
everything.
Midnighters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was another thing that got me to like, I want to be a musician.
Okay, hold on. Okay, Lamar, you're doing good. You're naming them good. Okay, you said it was the Beatles. See, man, me and you are twins. You said the Beatles, James Brown, and who's next after James Brown? Come on.
I'm gonna say Ike and Tina Turner.
No, they were underground. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about Ed Sullivan now.
I
Strictly
got you.
about Ed
Okay,
Sullivan.
I got you.
And
Okay,
what I
you're
seen that
right.
sparked me into wanting to be a performing musician
I
in
got
a
you.
band.
But let me say
Not
this.
to be
But
not to be a solo guitar
right.
player or solo bassist or
Yeah.
acoustic piano player. I wanted to be the excitement
That they
that I
bought.
saw from these acts. made me that I want to do that.
Well, let me say this to you, man, because you brought up a very, very unique point. I agree with you when you talk about Ed Sullivan. It was definitely the Beatles, James Brown, and Ike and Tina Turner. Yes, it was. It was those three. When it came to the mind blow of watching a live performance. Now, I'm gonna share with you the other elements that I follow with you. Here's what did it for me as a kid coming up. The elements was the Beatles, James Brown, and Sly Stone. That was it for
Oh
me.
yeah,
That was it.
yeah,
Those are the
yeah.
elements for me. The Beatles, James Brown, Sly and Family Stone. That was it. That made Cold Funk Rex. That's Rex. That's Rex A. Garvin Cold Funk. That's me, homemade from scratch. When I heard that as a kid, I had a nervous. I couldn't take it. People knew me as a comedian. That came with Bernie Mac and all them, and Steve Harvey, Jamie. They all know me. But music, let me go back to where at my age over 60, where I'm at right now, with my flashback, how it resides and how you and I vibing and talking. Hey, bruh, the Beatles, James Brown, Sly, and the Family Stone. But then I had to agree with you. Now you gave me a lesson on television. It was James Brown. I'm sorry, it was the Beatles, James Brown, and Ike and Tina Turner.
Right. And I'm going to add one other group, and that was the Temptations.
Oh, go ahead, tell it.
And so with
Tell it.
and so
Yep.
you got all that working
All that working.
for and then we got the Ohio Players. So you got all that working in Dayton, and the thing that became cool with Dayton, of course, we got in bands, and you was either a musician or a singer. So we're doing talent shows, and we're playing the Delphonics and the Moments and whatnot. But the Players showed us, and we didn't know this at the time, but the Players showed the musicians what a self-contained band could do.
Go ahead.
Which is you write the songs,
Go ahead.
you sing the songs. They they went through a couple of lead singers, but when they got with Junie, Junie was so strong. It's like they don't need no front man. Junie's got it. And then when Junie left, and they went to Mercury, that's when Sugarfoot stepped up to the forefront. And once he came out with Skin Tight, You a Bad Bad Lady, and he did that yow. That was it. It was like, oh yeah, you got to be you're going to be our new lead singer now.
Let me tell you something about the Ohio Players that you already know. But me being a spectator and a youngin' when this came out, let me tell you something. Pain and Funky Worm was one thing with Joni Morrison. Pain and Funky Worm, that was classic. Okay, now that's called a level. But when Sugarfoot, something happened that did that transformation, man. That transformation, and then they started having these beautiful women on the album cover. So the Ohio Players, they became a character within themselves in the band, and they had the music, the lyrics, they had everything going for them to back it up. They look good. Diamond is one of the greatest underrated drummers in history in my book. You got my man from the Bar-Kays, I think Michael Beard, I believe.
From Columbus.
Huh?
From Columbus. He's originally from Columbus, Michael.
Are you serious? Another Ohio person?
He's from Columbus.
I'm done with you. I can't take it no more. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done.
He's from Columbus.
He's from. I can't see. Okay, I can't take this. Ohio's too much. I'm having a nervous. I really am having a nervous breakdown right now.
Yeah. And I'm gonna tell you that there was two things that because when the Pleasure album came out, okay. Now, mind you, we've been seeing the Players since I was 66, 67. We seen them play at the on the Showmobile and whatnot, and then we knew what they rehearsed at. So however, when Pain came out, that's when we first said, oh, this sounds like this is, because we had a local radio station that had a good feed, WDAO. And I think it was maybe it was a 50,000 watt station back then, but it could reach to Cincinnati and Indianapolis, I think, or almost there, so it became a big station. And of course they played, all the local acts that we found out about later and grew to love. But when Funky Worm came out, and that went to #1. That was the
Ooh,
Players' first #1 R&B song on the R&B on the Billboard
it
charts.
was like comedy funk.
That's when everybody said, "Okay, now the Players is making some noise, and we need to like really tune in and hone in on what they're doing."
But let me tell you, Ohio players, that see, it's too bad that black funk bands don't get that same coverage that other cultures, other bands do. Something about black people don't really get, they don't give a shit about. That's why the black bands and funk bands are big overseas than they are here in America, man. But here in America, we take shit for granted. And I'm mad at my own people too. I mean, thank God for white people and Jewish people and Irish people and other cultures, man, because if you gotta depend on us to make money on funk, your ass is gonna be broke working at labor ready, goddamn. Okay, on the real tip. But let me tell you something, man. That doggone Sugarfoot, after Junie left, but that doggone Skin Tight, they didn't stop. How in the hell you
Right,
going? How in the hell you gonna start off with doom 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 doom? How the hell do you do that? And then you got the nerve to have on the B side, "Heaven Must Be Like This." Then you got Jive Turkey. What kind of shit is what? And then they come with Fire after that, Lamar.
right,
Come on,
right.
man. What's going on here? Then they gonna come with Contradiction? Are you for real? No, Honey? And yeah. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Yeah,
This is the first next level band in my black life that I've experienced when it comes. See, people don't know us, Lamar. They don't know how we feel. It's like we're the monkey and they're the organ grinder. They don't care how the monkey feel. They don't care how the monkey feel, man. They don't know what music mean to us. Music.
right,
Music, man. It's like
right.
and talk about when you went to Sugarfoot's house about them shoes, Lamar.
I was with a friend of mine who lived around the corner from Sugarfoot. Remember, I told you he stayed across the street from Westwood Elementary School.
Yeah.
And my buddy either broke a pick or broke a string or whatever. And he said, "Come on, we're gonna go over to Sugarfoot's house and get whatever we needed." And I'm like, what do you mean we're gonna go over to his house?" I said, "Yeah, come on." So obviously he must have had done it before, okay? But that was my first time. So we walked over there and he knocked on the door. And Sugarfoot's lady came to the door and said that he was upstairs asleep, that he had just got back from a gig on the road and he was upstairs asleep. I'm thinking, okay, well, let's just leave. We'll come back later. My buddy said, "Well, can you tell him that Cornelius is here and go wake him up?" And she closed the door and she said, "Okay." And then she came back. She said, "He's going to come downstairs. You guys come inside and you can sit down here in the living room." So when we got in there, I looked to the left and there was a staircase. And it was like about 10 steps that went up. And then it made a right turn, a 90-degree right turn. It
And,
was another 10
and this
steps
is a
that went up.
this is a black musician's house back in the '60s.
Right,
Go ahead,
right,
bro. Go ahead. Go
right.
ahead.
And on each step, there was like 2 or 3 pairs of shoes on each step on both sides, so that you had to walk through the middle of the steps to get up there. And it went as far as I could see up the steps. And it was boots, gaiters, Stetsons, all kind of shoes on both sides of each step, and different colors. So you got, back in the day, we wore alligators and boa and snakeskin shoes and boots and loafers and whatnot. And the first thing that I said was like, "Wow, this is what it means to be a musician. You
And
could
how
go
old
across the
and how,
country
and how
and,
old
and buy some
and how
cool
old
ass
were you?
shoes in different colors." I was probably 13, 14 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And that struck an impression on me.
I
Like,
bet.
how cool is this? You can go around the country and go to, different cities, and get stuff. Now, mind you, Dayton was in a unique situation
Mm.
because even though we were close to Cincinnati, you had the Playboy Club in Cincinnati. They had a Playboy Club in Cincinnati back then
Mm.
also.
Mm.
So a lot of stars like Benson and Bill Cosby, people like, they would come down there to do their thing at the Playboy Club.
Mm.
However, another hidden part of the Dayton story there was a club on the east side of town, which is where most of the Caucasians, because Dayton was west side was mostly for the blacks, the east side was mostly for the whites. That's how it sort of ran back then. But on the east side of town was a club called the Diamond Club. The Diamond Club would have everybody that was in R&B back in the day. So you had Little Richard, the Platters, Al Green. All of these people were coming to this little bitty club. So a lot of people knew about Dayton. And then I'm going to go back in time to what they call the prequel. Okay, the prequel, we're going to jump to the 30s and the 40s. Dayton had an area of town called the Fifth Street area. And the Fifth Street area, a lot of homes got torn down to build US 35. So before US 35 was built, Fifth Street was a popular street, and that's where guys from Duke Ellington, Cab Calloway, Count Basie, they would come in town and play at these clubs there, and they would pick up local musicians from Dayton to take with them on the road. So that Fifth Street history, by the time the Players came around, those guys in the Fifth Street area, they were like their fathers, another generation ahead of us. So, you had that situation going on. So Dayton was known for music way before the Players broke out, because the heavy jazz cats that would come through and play at these nightclubs that was off of Fifth Street. So, let's jump real quick back to Pain, and then back to Skin Tight. Okay, so we started off with Pain. We seen the Players do Pain, Ecstasy, and Pleasure on the Westbound label, and then they jump and they go to Mercury, where they record in Chicago now instead of Detroit. Well, when Skin Tight hit, and then when Fire hit, they got the nice cars now. They got different color Porsches and Maseratis, and
and the white, and they got the white women too, eh?
Well, I probably so. I don't know about that part, but I'm just saying they're riding around town in these cars. They didn't say, bye Dayton, we're going to Chicago. Bye Dayton, we're going to New York. Bye Dayton, we're going to LA. No, they stayed right there. So we saw them move to another. They got a rehearsal building off of Salem Avenue where they had a new rehearsal building at, and we would see all the nice rides outside while they were rehearsing. So what that did for all of the other guys and musicians in Dayton was, number one, you can make it if you have a self-contained band and you just need one guy that could sing lead for you. So you could cut out having 3 or 4 singers in the band, because you didn't need 3 or 4 singers in the band, because the player showed us you don't have to do that.
I noticed. Okay. I noticed you mentioned that word a lot, self-contained.
Right.
What is the importance and power in self-contained?
Okay, so I'm going to parlay that into another group from Dayton, which is Lakeside.
Go ahead.
Okay, so Lakeside left Dayton. Unlike the players stayed around, but Lakeside left Dayton to go to LA. And when they were in LA and they got known as for gigging and stuff, well, when they got their first, not their first offer, because their first offer was on ABC Dunhill Records, they learned a lesson, an important lesson that deals with what I'm going to explain about self-contained. They signed with ABC Dunhill label. None of the band members played on none of the tracks. Some of the singers didn't sing on some of the tracks. And basically, they didn't have control. So they're singing what somebody else wrote for them. Okay? So when they came to get their next deal, Dick Griffey was their manager.
Go ahead.
and he met them at Mavericks Flat, where they were one of the stellar acts in the house band down there.
Have you played there before at that place in L.A. At the
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
I did play it when I moved to LA, and after in '83, I did eventually play there
Can you
myself.
please tell the listeners about that wonderful black club, man? I mean, what a paradise for musicians back in the day.
It was like the Mecca. Uh, everybody who's everybody sort of got started out there,
That's right.
and even Platypus got discovered there. You know,
Mm.
so I didn't play there with my group when I got out there, but years later I was with some other people and I got to play there. But it's they got pictures of a lot of the groups there. There was an all-female group. I can't think of the group's name, but they had one guy in that group, and his name was Johnny Rogers. He played keys. He now plays keys for Lakeside. That's how Lakeside found out
But
about
let
him.
me say this about Mavericks Flat, and let me explain to people who have not been to
Sure,
L.A.
sure.
It's amazing, man. Like when you go to Crenshaw or some parts of L.A., you think you
Yeah.
down south. I mean, you think you're in Mississippi, Alabama, somewhere when you go to some parts in LA. Because when you go inside Mavericks Flat, it's like you may see pickled pig feet and barbecue potato chips and pork chops. And that's the whole vibe of that place, man. That's what you call the birth of great R&B soulful blackness, man, at a place like that.
Right. And there was two clubs, and I don't know why I didn't go, because I went to LA when I was 30 in 1983 with my band Record Player.
Mm.
I don't know why we didn't go to the Total Experience nightclub, because that was
Oh.
jumping off at the same time in '83.
Is that
But I just
was that owned by that guy Lonnie who did the Gap Band?
right, Lonnie Simmons.
Right, okay.
Yeah, they had Total Experience Records, who the Gap Band was on their label, and they had Total
Goody,
Experience nightclub.
Goody, y'all Berlin people.
Right. So, uh, so Lakeside, they had their first deal on ABC.
Uh,
It didn't go well, didn't chart or nothing, and so Dick Griffey decided to put them on his label that he was creating with Don Canales. You know, they had originally had started Soul
yeah,
Train
Soul
Records,
Train Records. Hmm.
and then, you know, he bought Don out after a couple of releases, and he decided to create Solar. So he took Lakeside with him. Now, Lakeside had already had the problem of not being able to record their own music and control how they wanted to sound. So at the time that Dick Griffey was courting them, they were also being courted by Norman Whitfield from
Ouch.
Whitfield Records. Okay.
How about that?
At the same time, that's how good Lakeside was. They had both of these guys coming at them,
Wow.
and they wanted to get
Yeah,
them.
because Norman
So
had Rolls Royce. Did he have Star? Did
he
he have
had
Stargard too?
right. She had Stargard and Rolls Royce. Yes, he did. So the group made a decision, and they told both of them that we're not going to sign unless we can control. And this is the difference in what a self-contained band means. Self-contained means the music comes from within the band.
Go ahead.
That's the self part of it. And it also means that the production comes from the band.
Mm.
Okay. And sometimes, you know, you can be produced by somebody else, but they're producing what you write, your stuff. So that's what self-contained band means. Now, the Commodores, they were self-contained
Oh
band, but the
yes.
Commodores had a producer, James Carmichael, I think,
Yes.
and another guy. I can't think of the other guy's name. So sometimes
Skip Scarborough, maybe?
no, but
No?
Skip did some stuff with
With Earth,
LTD and
Earth,
some
Wind, and
other
Fire?
groups.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
and Earth, Wind and Fire and
Yeah.
Emotions,
Uh-huh.
right. So you can have a producer to write for you and produce stuff for you, but basically the self-contained band, they don't have to depend on that because they're going to do their own stuff. So this was the deal with Lakeside. They told Norman Whitfield, can we write and produce our own stuff? Because we didn't get to do that on our first deal. Norman Whitfield said, no, it don't work like that. I write all the stuff. That's how I do with all my groups. Okay. They asked Dick Griffey the same thing. Dick Griffey said, well, since you guys are new to this, how about I'll let you do one side of the album and then I'll bring in somebody else to do the other side of the album, which ended up being Leon Silvers. So that way we won't have a situation where there's nothing going on. At least I can see that the other side's going to have something. So they ended up discussing among themselves as a group that, because Lakeside was like New Birth, they're modeled after the singers and the band is one entity, not the band and then the singers. Okay. And case in point, when Don Cornelius was still involved with Soul Train Records with Dick Griffey, he's like, well, I don't want to see an album cover with, 9, 10 guys on it. Why don't we just hire the singers? Because Lakeside had 4 singers and then they had, I think, 5 guys in the band. So Dick asked him, he said, hey, he only wants to sign the singers. How's that going to fit with you guys? And to their credit, the guy said, no, if we're going to sign, we're going to sign as a unit. Lakeside is the band and the vocalist together. So that's where the self-contained band concept comes from. And I'm saying that the players sort of started that for all of the groups ended up getting deals, because all of the groups that got deals, you had Lakeside, you had Slave, you had Heatwave, you had Dayton, you had Sun, you had Phaso. They were all self-contained bands.